Welcome to AI Podcasts. Today we're digging into a fresh EMNLP 2025 paper called Retrieval-augmented GUI agents with generative guidelines. And the short version is this. They add a tiny guideline generator between a software agent and a pile of tutorials, and that little helper turns long, messy instructions into short, step-by-step hints that the agent can actually use in the moment.
So instead of feeding the agent a whole blog post and hoping for the best, they give it a concise nudge that's tailored to what's on screen right now.
Exactly. Think of it like a tour guide who skims a dozen travel blogs for you and whispers just the next turn you need to make, not the entire history of the city.
Nice. Before we go deeper, who's behind this work?
The lead I noted is Ran Xu from Emory, with collaborators including Kaixin Ma at Tencent AI Lab, a university and industry team-up.
Right. Now, the pain point here is familiar if you've watched GUI agents try to do real tasks. They're good at basic clicks, but still get tripped up by long-tail situations, new app versions, or slightly different layouts.
Yeah, because training data is limited and the real world is weird. People have tried two big strategies. One is to train agents on synthetic trajectories distilled from web tutorials. The other is RAG, where you retrieve relevant text at inference time and stuff it into the model context.
And both have issues. The training approach is heavy and can overfit to the synthetic data. And naive RAG just drops a wall of text into the model, which can be noisy and off-topic for the step you're on.
Exactly. Tutorials are procedural. If you chunk them blindly, you break the logic. And not every retrieved page matches the agent's current state. So the authors ask, what if we keep the agent frozen and instead train a small sidecar model that does two things in real time? First, it judges whether a retrieved tutorial snippet is actually relevant to the current screen and action history. And second, it rewrites that snippet into a short, step-aware guideline.
So a filter and a summarizer, but tuned to the exact step the agent is taking. That's the generative guideline part.
That's it. The beauty is it's plug and play. You don't retrain the big vision language agent. You just bolt on the guideline generator and feed its advice into the agent's next decision.
How did they train that little helper so it doesn't just paraphrase everything it sees?
Two stages. First, a warm start with supervised fine-tuning. They use a stronger teacher model to produce example guidelines that show the style they want, and the helper learns to imitate those. Then they do a rejection-style fine-tuning loop. The idea is, if a generated guideline helps the frozen agent pick the correct next action on a labeled step, keep it. If it doesn't, toss it. Over time, the helper learns not just to sound helpful, but to be helpful.
That makes sense. It's like a coach who only repeats play calls that actually move the ball down the field during practice.
Perfect analogy. And they pair this with retrieval over a large pool of tutorials. At each step, they pull a handful of candidate snippets, run them through the helper, keep the ones marked relevant, and pass the condensed guideline to the agent.
Quick clarifier, when you say condensed, how short are we talking?
Short enough to fit comfortably in the agent's context window without drowning out the on-screen reasoning. A couple of crisp sentences that reference the goal and the current UI, not a page of prose.
Got it. What about benchmarks? Where did they test this?
A mix of mobile and web tasks, notably the live Android World benchmark, plus web interaction datasets like Mind2Web style tasks. The headline is that the plugin improves success over agents that either have no tutorials at inference or just use vanilla retrieval.
Right, and importantly, they report the strongest gains in the live mobile setting, which is where you get all the little quirks of real apps and real timing.
Exactly. And because the base agent stays frozen, the improvement comes from better use of external knowledge rather than yet another round of heavyweight retraining.
Did they look at ablations like how many tutorials to retrieve or what happens if you skip that rejection step?
They did. There's a sweet spot in how many snippets you pull each time. Too few and you miss critical steps. Too many and you add noise. And the rejection-guided fine-tuning consistently beats simple supervised training, which says the utility signal matters.
Okay, so that's the upside. Let's talk trade-offs. What should listeners be cautious about?
First, generality. Most of their experiments sit on a specific family of vision language agents. I'd want to see replication on different backbones and on desktop workflows, not just mobile and web. Second, latency. Retrieval plus guideline generation adds overhead. The paper emphasizes the accuracy gains, but production teams will want hard numbers on end-to-end time and cost.
And I'm also thinking about data curation. Tutorials on the web are messy. If your retrieval pool has duplicates, outdated advice, or clickbait, your helper has more work to do. They do some filtering, but reproducibility depends on access to similar corpora and labeling recipes.
Yes, and there's the teacher model question. The warm start relies on a stronger model to demonstrate good guidelines. That's practical, but teams who want fully open pipelines will need to substitute an open teacher or tune longer without one.
One more nuance. A lot of evaluation is step accuracy, which is great, but in real usage I also care about time to task completion and how gracefully the agent recovers from a wrong turn. Live user studies would be a nice next step.
Couldn't agree more. On the bright side, because this is a sidecar, it naturally supports safer behaviors. If the helper thinks nothing is relevant, it can say so, and the agent can fall back to exploration rather than follow a bad recipe.
Speaking of safety, imagine adding a simple confidence score or even a tiny checklist. If the guideline says tap settings, but there is no settings button, maybe pause and requery instead of guessing.
Exactly. And there are straightforward engineering wins to chase. Cache retrieve snippets across similar screens, compress guidelines, or pre-compute for popular tasks to keep latency in check.
I also like the idea of adaptive retrieval depth. If the agent is clearly on track, fetch fewer snippets. If it's stuck or the UI changes sharply, widen the search and let the helper work a little harder.
And beyond efficiency, there's a research direction I find exciting. Combine this inference time guidance with training time distillation. In other words, let the helper guide the agent today, and then turn the best moments into training data for tomorrow's agent.
So the agent learns from the tour guide over time and eventually needs less hand-holding. I like that.
Me too. And just to anchor the practical takeaway for teams listening, the minimal change path here is appealing. You don't need to rip out your existing GUI agent. Keep it frozen, add retrieval, train a small helper to judge and rewrite tutorials, and you can often lift success on messy real tasks.
Right, and keep the numbers manageable. Pick a small handful of candidate tutorials each step, ask the helper for concise guidance, and resist the temptation to dump the whole internet into context.
If we had to summarize in one breath, I'd say this. Give your agent a coach, not an encyclopedia. The coach watches the game state, picks the one relevant play from the playbook, and calls it clearly.
And my quick takeaway is this. Procedural knowledge on the web is valuable, but only when filtered and grounded to the current screen. Generative guidelines make that connection real.
Final question for you. If you were extending this next, where would you start?
I'd validate on a different model family and a desktop benchmark, measure full task time including retrieval, and add a simple confidence gate so the agent knows when to seek more context. Then I'd explore turning the best guidelines into training data.
That's a solid roadmap. All right, that's our coffee-length tour of retrieval-augmented GUI agents with generative guidelines. Thanks for listening to AI Podcast.
And as always, if you try this pattern in your own stack, let us know how it goes. See you next time.